What's going down? Wait to see who get up in here and get this damn knowledge. Got some shit to tell y'all. Got some shit to tell y'all, man. So what up, y'all? Let y'all, I'm just gonna start. Wait for y'all to get in here. So the last video I did was on the Saturn Moloch cult that was running the world. And I was gonna give you guys a part 2 where I take you into the computer. I do a screenshot video and show you all the symbolism. But as I got deeper into it, it was too much coming out. So I just basically have to do another live video to tell you guys the shit I found. And then this is part 2, so I'm just gonna have to do a part 3 because it's the shit that I found. Yo, what up? The shit that I found is crazy, and it has to be known. I mean, this is basically the biggest secret that's going on in the world. And, you know, we talked about the Saturn cult. That's part of it. The Saturn cult is part of it. That shit is not all of it. And so, and then we have to put it together why they're doing this. Yo, what up? So we have to put together why they're doing this and, you know, the whole purpose for this whole Saturn, you know, crap. And then really see what's going on, fam, and really see how it's interwoven throughout the culture and how they had to get us involved in it because we're basically the battery for this whole shit. We're the battery because we have this vibranium that's a superconductor. So it allows that energy to flow freely, and they had to get us involved in on that shit for it to work. And so we're gonna take you through the whole shit and break down this whole damn shit. This shit is crazy. Like it seriously is crazy. Y'all gonna have to do some research on your own after this. But you know, this is the stuff that has to be known. This is stuff that has been hidden from us, and that's been running the world, you know, from the beginning. So we need to figure that out. Before I do though, you know, I gave you guys a deal on the last week. I showed you guys the public official bonds. This is all the information you need to know on how to file a lien on a police officer or any public official. That's a judge, a court clerk, a district attorney, anybody who violates your rights, even a little bit, even if they halfway violate your rights. You can place a lien on their bond, and they can't work that day. So I gave you guys a deal last week. I said if you guys buy the Great Book of Melanin Research, that I would give you this and the Know Your Rights manual and the card. So basically the whole package. This is the police stop law package. You can get this on the Reelnagas website. You know, just go to the Naga knowledge shop. But the site was down for a few days and I didn't know. And so people were trying to buy it. People were trying to get in there and get the book and get the deal because I cut the deal off today. So because the website was shut down, I'm going to extend the deal till Saturday. And so it just so happened somebody hit me up and said they're trying to buy it. They were trying to buy it and the button wasn't working. So if you guys are trying to buy the book or get the deal, you can go back in now. I fixed the button, so I'll extend the deal to actually till Monday. So if you guys want to do that, since this website was down. But again, this is everything you need to know right here. So again, to basically get police officers off your ass. This is it. I mean, we have a police stop law class on the Patreon. If you guys want to join that, just go over to patreon.com/Reelnagas. You can join. That's at the $20 a month level, and we do 4 classes a month. So and I'm breaking off all the laws, everything that you can do in order to stop the police officer from getting at you. And what's being shown in there is I show different videos and aspects of police officers who don't know the law, and they're getting told, and they're getting basically owned by people who do know the law. So this stuff actually works. You just need to be able to see how it works. So, and in the back of this, just so you guys know again, this is all of the laws right here. These are all of the laws in every state, in all 50 states, all the bond laws. So this information hasn't been written in one place before. This has been the hardest information to find. This is the stuff they try to hide from us so that they can't get their bond snatched up. So they'll play 3-card money with this damn information. So Just so y'all know, it's in the back of here. So if you want to order the book, right here. Now that's that. Go to Reelnagas.com, get that package. Make sure you hook that up. So let's get into this. Man, all right, where to start? All right, so we're gonna start back with Saturn again. So, you know, I forgot everything I told y'all today, so I'm gonna go back. So maybe some of the stuff may be going over again from the last video, just so I can refresh your memory. But does it work for federal? It has the information. It has the information on what to do with federal police officers. So just so you know, real quick, he asked if the bonds work for federal officers, so or employees. Federal employees and federal officers aren't required to have bonds, but I do tell you how you can get at them because they don't have the bond. See, these are different laws. State people are required to have bonds. Federal employees, federal officers are not required to have bonds, but they do have checks and balances for them. So I tell you how to get at them as well. So again, real quick, public official bonds, how to get them off your ass. All right, so let's go back. Yeah, my phone done froze. Oh, hold up. All right, so at the very beginning, we're going to go back to the Sumerian culture, right? So this is the earliest writings we have on, on what they call cosmogony. That's like the god pantheon or whatever. So their god in Sumeria was An, right? Or Anu. That was the name of the Sumerian god. And in ancient culture, An was actually Saturn. So when you go back and you read the culture, you go read the text, or the Sumerian, the cuneiform text, An was actually equated to Saturn. So it goes all the way back to the very beginning, just right off the bat. So what happened was, at that time, and what they don't tell us, this is the craziest thing in the world. At that time, our solar system looked completely different than what it does now. And all of the cultures, ancient cultures in history, allude to this fact. They talk about how different the skies used to look. It was insane. This is where you get the pantheon of gods fighting, and and all this crazy lore about these gods in the sky doing all this crazy stuff. That's because the planets were in the sky, and they looked completely different from from what we're looking at now. And so basically what they saw in the sky, and this is in the ancient text, and also there's a video that you guys can watch that'll give you a better context of this. It's called Symbols of an Alien Sky by this guy named David Talbot. And he actually wrote a book in the 70s called the Saturn Myth. And he wasn't really getting any traction with it till like the 90s, because people didn't believe his theories, and then technology started to be able to validate his theories. And so he did these videos in the late 90s. He did one video, and then in 2012 he did another one. That's this one's called Symbols of an Alien Sky, and he breaks down how the ancient sky, from the ancient days, the Sumerian days, how that sky used to look, and to where we look now. And you can then, once you see how the sky used to look, the solar system used to look, it actually puts everything in place as far as religion, because there's these holes and gaps in all the religions, but they all look alike, but there's these holes and gaps on why they all say the same thing and they look alike, and you don't have any idea why. This whole thing puts it all together. So, and this is just a small part of it, so you guys need to know this. So in the ancient times, Saturn was our sun. Saturn was the sun. It sat up at the North Pole. It was where the Polaris star is. It was sitting up there, and it was actually an alignment. They call it the Great Conjunction, or the primeval conjunction of the ancient times. And so the alignment was Saturn, and they were all on the pole axis. All these planets were are right in line on the same pole axis. So you had Saturn, Venus, Mars, and Earth, and it was literally in one complete straight line. So we were looking at, from Earth, we would be able to see Mars. Mars was small. Then right behind it was Venus. It was just slightly bigger. So it just barely had a little circle hue around Mars. And then right behind that was this giant Saturn. And so this is what they saw in the sky. And because the planets were so close together, the planets would create these electrical discharges in the sky. So Venus was creating these what they call plasma discharges. And from these discharges, these electrical discharges, is where you get all these symbols of the stars and all this type of shit. So, but how the picture looked in the sky, and remember, they didn't have any city lights and shit like that to dim the space, the stars in space. So what they would see in the sky was this giant thing. It looks just like an eye. So you had a small Mars, you had a little bit bigger Venus, and then right behind it, you had this big giant kind of white ball, which was Saturn. It didn't have the rings around it. The Saturn didn't have the rings at the time. And so you could see this giant thing in the sky. It looked just like an eye. So when it wasn't discharging, when Venus wasn't discharging and making the all the electrical discharges, it looked like an eye. It looked just like an eye. And this is where they get the all-seeing eye. This is where this shit comes from. And so, when you start to really unravel all this shit, these people were living with a giant eye in the sky at the time. And so when you look at the Sumerian cultures and their depiction, they have all these depictions of this circle, a circle within a circle with shooting streams coming out from the center. And all of the cultures in history have this same exact thing. They were all looking at the same thing in the sky, and it was Mars, Venus, and Saturn. So the great worship, the ancient worship in history, the Trinity, what they try to tell you was the mother, the father, and the baby, and the son, is really Saturn, Venus, and Mars. That's the actual Trinity throughout history. And this is the secret they don't want to tell you, because they're worshiping Saturn. But the thing is, they're not worshiping Saturn. So when Saturn was really being worshipped, we were worshiping Saturn. This Saturn was the melanated people on the planet. That was the Anunnaki. Anunnaki actually means those who came from Saturn, because An means Saturn. So at that time, in those ancient days, that's who was worshiping Saturn. We worshiped Saturn when it was at its height in the sky. At some point in time, Saturn fell. It was called the Great Fall of Saturn, because Zeus or Jupiter, which is equated to Zeus in ancient history, overtook Saturn in his rotation. And so Saturn fell from the north to the south. And so it fell into what's called the dark world, and it became the Dark Lord. And this is where this is where your Satan and devil comes from. When Saturn fell from its height at the top pole or the north pole to the southern pole, or the dark parts of Hades or hell, he became the Dark Lord. And so there's crazy reasons for why they worship Saturn in its descent, in its fall. We worship Saturn at its height, and those are two different energies that are going on. And so this is one of the reasons, or there are many reasons why they do this. So we're about to get into that. So really quick though, I wanted to break down just the different symbolism of what Saturn. So Saturn was equated to Kronos, the ancient Greek god of time. And, Kronos was known for killing his, Kronos was known for eating his kids, right? So, and Kronos was this old guy with this white beard. And so anytime just know symbolism, you guys have to start learning symbolism, because this is the secret code of how they talk to each other and to you. They talk to your spirit through symbols, but you don't know. But your spirit understands these things and they react to it. So you got to start learning this shit so you can start protecting yourself from it. So they can use one symbol to, across the board. So whenever you see this old white guy with the beard, that's a representation of Saturn. Kronos and Saturn are the same person. So who are the old people who you see in popular culture with the white beard? Santa Claus. It's right in his name. Santa is Satan, but it's really Saturn. Moses, the Grim Reaper, because Kronos had what he called the sickle, that thing that the Grim Reaper has. He has this little hook thing. It's called the sickle. So that whenever you see the Grim Reaper, the dude holding that's Saturn. That's Kronos holding the sickle. I'm gonna tell you what else that thing was in a second. It's really gonna fuck you up. So then you had Odin in ancient the Viking lore. He was Odin. Then he was in the Lord of the Rings. He's Gandalf, which is crazy. And also in Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf fights that thing in Lord of the first one, where he says, "You shall not pass," and he's fighting that big horn thing, that's Moloch. They call it the demon of Bel Rock. Why? Moloch was also called Baal. So again, they showed you what they were doing. You had Saturn and Baal, which were literally two the same. They're the same person, Baal and Saturn. So they're showing you what was going on. Then Lord of the Rings itself is about Saturn. So then, if you really notice in Lord of the Rings, the evil lord Sauron, at the top of in Mordor, at the top of the mountain, he had this crescent. Well, hold on, let me get into that. I'm gonna get into that in a minute. Hey, I'm jumping the gun. Hold on, let me. I'm gonna get into that in a minute. We get into Lord of the Rings in a sec. But Gandalf is Saturn, that demon horn demon where they went in the first one. That was Moloch or Baal. In the Matrix, he's the architect. When they go see the architect, I think it was episode 2, the white bearded dude. That's Saturn, the great, and they called him the great architect. So y'all got to know the symbolism. That's Saturn. And then was really ill. So another term for that sickle that Kronos was holding is called a Sith, or they'll use the word scythe, but it's actually a Sith, which again in the Star Wars they use it like this, but it's actually, the Sith it's a representation of Saturn. That's why the Sith again are the dark side. So the whole point of this whole thing is the dark side and the light is they're both God. And so and we would go back to the Sabbatean Frank cult. Sabbath, or the Sabbatean, sabotage, it comes from Sabbath, right? Sabbath, the actual name for Sabbath was Saturn's day. So even the Sabbath, all of that goes back to Saturn, and it's about the law of reversal. And so remember, evil is the left hand of God, if good is the right hand. So if we doing the left hand of God, that's still doing God's work, because you can't have good without evil. So both of them have to exist, and they both have to be used in the world in order for the world to be in balance. This is their mentality. So in ancient history, who were the first to work the light side? That was you. That was you, the melanated people. We are the people of the light side. We worship Saturn when it was in its height. They worship Saturn in its dark place, at the bottom, in its hell, in the dark. And that's why it's the Dark Lord. That's why they wear the black robes and all of that, because Saturn is the Dark Lord. And the reason they do that as well is because they understand this science at its height. And you do have to have duality, and both energies are at play, and they both have their balance and their place in the universe. And so one is not better than the other. And so when they understand this in science, as we talked about numerology, and y'all have to get this book right here. This is in the thumbnail. Let me put it a little closer. This is called the complete book of numerology. It has also the gematria, the Jewish numerology is in here, and it breaks it off real nice. So y'all want to get that. But so in numerology, people equate to a number as well. And so the ancient people of the earth, we are the number 9. This is why the number 9 is the most sacred number that there is. It's the number of creation. And so we are the creators. We are the original creators. And so we are the number of the 9. The 9 is, the 9 is harmony, it's fluidity, it's creation. And then the opposite, it's the ascending spiral. We're constantly moving on, getting better, more, being more. than what we were before. That's that whole point. The opposite of that, the opposite energy of that would be the 6, and that would be the Caucasian or the non-melanated people. They understand this science, the 6 and the 9. This is what's going on in the world. One science, we were working one science at one point. They started to flip it and work the other science. Why do they do that? Because Saturn was the 6th planet from the sun. So they're putting all their energy into that because it's the flip energy of you. And so this is the energy that they have to keep working in the world in order to maintain power. Because us as the creators, as the gods of the planet, you have this vibranium, you would always rise. Remember, you're the phoenix. So you would always rise from the ashes throughout history. No matter whenever your cultures fell, you would always continue to get that information back and rise. So they had to get the knowledge and understand, well, how do we keep them from coming back? Oh, we have to work this magical ritual on these motherfuckers and make them forget completely who they were. And then work the complete opposite science on them. But not only that, they brought you in as the power source for their fucking shit. You're in there now. You're doing it. You're helping them with your goat conversations, and you're buying other shoes, and you're supporting other all of that is supporting Saturn. And I'm about to get into that in a minute, how they do that. But that's what this whole shit is about. The whole secret Saturn cult is about maintaining power over you. And I'm about to get into that. So let me break down some more symbolism though of Saturn in the world that you guys need to understand. So we told you about Moloch. Moloch is the bull. And also, when they do the horn thing, that's a symbol. Anytime you see horns on anything, that's a symbol of Moloch. The great owl. So the owl is actually on your dollar bill. That's you're literally worshiping you're literally worshiping Moloch right on your, and everyone worships the money, or the love of money. Anytime you see the symbolism of king, because king, its original word was Melech or Moloch. So king is not the original word. Moloch is the king. So anytime you see that, King James, you're worshiping Moloch. He was also El. So anytime you see the word El in front or at the end of anything, it's Saturn. So let's break this down. Like your elite, elementary, elections, anything with L in front of it is all about Saturn. And then you get into your names like Michael. So Michael, right? So this is where you get the symbolism why Michael Jordan was so worshipped, because Mikael means who is like El, or who is like Saturn. It literally, his name means who is like Saturn. So that's why that fool is worshipped. And he's going to be worshipped until they elevate LeBron up there, because he's actually the Capricorn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and it's the goat. So, which is another symbolism of Saturn. Saturn's other name he was also known as Yahweh. Y'all don't know that. Saturn was also known as Yahweh. And then another name for Yahweh is Yahoo. Like the internet company, Yahoo. That's Sat. I mean, that's Yahweh. That's one of his names. So also, the Capricorn, the goat, also Pan. Pan is the goated, the hooved, half man, half goat or hoof dude with the horns through the flute, and he lures motherfuckers into his realm to eat them. So that's Pan. Baphomet is Saturn, but Baphomet is actually a combination of, it's actually a depiction of Saturn, Venus, and Mars. See, the secret worship of those three is the hidden force. You have to worship all of those, which is why you have Israel. Israel, or Israel, is actually Isis, Ra, and El. Ra, most people think is this sun. It's this sun, but it became this sun later in life. It was actually Ra at first was Mars. So Israel is actually Saturn, Venus, and Mars worship. Listen, but they don't tell you this. And again, this goes back to the Sabbatean cult, or the Sabbatean Frankism cult, that they learn, that they won't tell you about. This is the real shit of what they practice. I hope y'all went and looked that up. The law of reversal. We know we can't do all good, because no one can do all of that. So we'll just do all bad in order to bring back the Messiah. And so So from that Saturn worship, it just pervaded throughout history, you know, and then it started to get weaker and weaker as you know, the later culture started to pop up. They started to get just little vestiges, little samples of what we used to worship in history, and they started to try to roll with that. And then there was something called Saturn. Actually, had once Saturn fell, Saturn actually came back for a small time. It's called, so it was like the return of the golden age. So when Saturn was here, it was called the golden age, because Saturn is the planet of abundance and agriculture, and you know, the planet of time and all these different things, and you know, of wealth and health. That's what Saturn is. So everybody worships Saturn because, you know, shit was good when Saturn was here. We like, yeah, we chilling, nigga. Like, nigga, Saturn is cool, nigga. Hey, nigga, you see my pockets, nigga? My pockets is fat, homie. So that was all about Saturn. And so when Saturn left, you know, they had this turmoil, and then Saturn came back for a little while, and they called it the return of the golden age. And this is where you get Rome and them worshiping Saturn. But before I get to Rome and the later cultures, we got to get back to what happened when Saturn was displaced. So when Saturn was displaced out of its position, and it was a lot of celestial activity going on with all these planetary bodies. And so when you look at the stories throughout history, they talk about this doomsday. What happens is doomsday culture, and or something that happened where the whole planet was upheaved, and all you had this lightning, and the planet was plunged into darkness and all this crazy shit. That's because all these planets were moving around and creating all this crazy ass chaotic energy, and it was affecting all the things that were here on Earth. So you had something called doomsday, or the other term for it, because you had all these electrical storms going on, these thunderstorms. Another term for it at that time, they called it Ragnarok. How many of y'all know about Thor Ragnarok? Because y'all don't also know that Thor is also another depiction of Mars. The thunder god is Mars. So Thor Ragnarok is just Mars and Saturn. So, or it's the story of when Saturn got displaced and Zeus overtook him. And so that's where you see in the Greek culture where Zeus he defeated Kronos. That was the whole thing. Zeus took Saturn's position. But then there was another battle that y'all don't know about that was in history between Saturn and another cat, or another celestial body. And these stories also played out towards the end. This is where Jesus started to come in, the Jesus stories. So also, let me start running through history before we get into Jesus. I'm going to give you guys, damn, what just happened? Oh, so I want to give you guys some more of the symbolism that's going down the line. So Doomsday Ragnarok, that's one of them. So we told you about Baal. That's one of his names. Also Bel, which is the same word as Baal, Bel and Baal. Baal, which is why you have every game in the world today deals with a ball. The ball is the center focal point of every single game today. The word game also means distraction, just so you know. It goes back to the word distraction. But so ball, you have a ball in every single game, which you're worshiping Baal. And then also, what do you have when you spend money? What is that called? It's the paper money. It's called a what? A bill. It's the same word as Baal. You're worshiping all of this nigga's forms. And every form he was in, they just threw it all into throughout culture, and you're worshiping all forms of it, all forms of this nigga. Which is, like I said, was not necessarily a bad thing. Saturn wasn't bad. It depends on which energy you're focused on. Saturn was in his height. He was the great god. He was the one who brought light in abundance to the world. Then when he fell, you know, to the dark place in the south position in the galaxy, he was the Dark Lord. You know, and this is when they started worshiping on him. This is when the opposite people started to worship him, because that was their energy. They understand what their energy is. They can't worship him the way we did, so they have to worship him in their own way, which is the opposite of us. If they're the embodiment or the opposite of our frequency, which they are, then they have to do the opposite of what we do. So we worship him at his height, they worship him at his descent. So So another term for that at that time, because what happened when Zeus got displaced, or when Saturn got displaced the second time, It was because of a new celestial body that was coming in. So Saturn, Jupiter took its place, but there was a new body that Saturn was fighting with that was taking its position, and that was our sun today. Because our sun was invisible when Saturn was at its height, because Saturn was fixed in the sky. It was called the immovable sun, the immovable light, the father of kings. It was always there. You could always count on him to be right there. It was because it was on our axis with us, excuse me, with Mars, Venus, and Earth. It would rotate. All planets would rotate together at the same time. So it was always there. It never moved. And so then you got our great body of sun now, which is, Ra, for lack of better term, we're just gonna call it Ra. Because Ra is also Mars. I want y'all to understand that. Ra was Mars as well. Horus and Ra were Mars before our sun started to take prominence in the galaxy, its full position. And so when it did that, it became the true sun. And so now you had these dueling suns. Now these dueling stars, or Star Wars. This is where the whole Star Wars shit come from. You had Saturn battling the new sun that was trying to take position in the galaxy. And so Saturn, again, which is the Sith, you have remember his Sith, Darth Vader means Dark Father. Because Saturn was the father of kings. He was known as the father of this galaxy. So Darth Father is Saturn. Darth Vader is Saturn. But then Luke Skywalker, the first part of Luke, or Luke in Latin means light. L-U-C. You got it. They wrote it L-U-K-E, but it's actually L-U-C. Luke means light. Light Skywalker. Which light walks across the sky? That's the sun. Because we had the immovable sun, which was Saturn, and then this new sun came in here and started moving across the sky. They was like, oh shit, this motherfucker, where he going? And that's where the Luke Skywalker comes in. And then also, where did Palpatine live? On the what? The Death Star, because Saturn died. They say Saturn had died. It was the death of Saturn. This is where you get the Death Star from. All of this symbolism is out there for your ass to know. Is right there. They've been smacking you in the face with it for fucking ever. And so then also the term Jedi. So when these when these planets were in conjunction, they would create all these electrical discharges. And so sometimes the discharges from Venus, it was only Venus that was doing the electrical discharges. They was plasma electrical discharges, and sometimes they look like 8-pointed stars and 4-pointed stars. Sometimes they look like pyramids, and when it looked like a pyramid, Mars looked like an eye right in the middle. So actually, when it wasn't doing the electrical discharges, it looked like one giant eye in the sky. And so Venus was called the eye. It's crazy. Venus was called the eye, and Mars was called the pupil. But then when Venus started to create these electrical discharges, then you had these stars. You had this giant symbolism of this star with this giant circle, and in it, this star, like an 8-pointed star flexing out to all points. And then within the middle of the star, you had this little small circle that was Mars. Excuse me. And so, it was creating all these electrical discharges. And I lost the thing. Hold on. All right. And so at one of the electrical discharges would be called, or some of them look like scepters. So, this is where the king's scepter came in, because when you're looking in the sky, so they recreated this stuff in a lab with plasma discharges, and they look exactly, it's crazy. That's why you had to go watch Symbols of an Alien Sky. The plasma discharges, electrical discharges they created in the lab look exactly like the ancient symbols and shit that kings and shit were holding, like scepters and the trident and all the rest of that shit. It's absolutely crazy. So the Jedi, and you go into Egypt, there's something called the Jed. And so there's a position, you have the Ankh and you have the Jed, and you put the Ankh inside of the Jed, and that's supposed to be the scepter. That was the one scepter. The Jed, which is crazy, the Jed was an electrical discharge, one of those plasma discharges that you would see in the sky. They recreated that shit in the lab. It looks just like a Jed. And so the Jed eye, because when they would create that, at the top of the electrical creation was still Mars, Venus, and Saturn, which was the eye at the top. So the Jedi. This is where you get this shit from. This shit is absolutely insane when you start unraveling all of this shit. But you have to understand that they wiped out our history. They completely wiped out our history. When they burned all the books in the Library of Alexandria, this is the shit they burned. The history of Saturn being the son of the planet before it was displaced by our current sun. But this is the shit that we don't know, and this is the things this is the shit that has you disharmonic or in disharmony with the planet because you don't understand your history, and then you're giving all of your energy to a ritual that they created that's meant to destroy you. It's meant to uplift them, and the reason is because in ancient, so let's move on to the modern Saturn worship into Rome. When Saturn had came back at its position for a little bit, you had the return of the Golden Age, and so this is where Rome was called. Its ancient name was Saturnia, and so where they held their laws, it was a place called Capitoline Hill in Rome. This is where we get in America. You get Capitol Hill in America, but Capitoline Hill in Rome, its actual name was Mount Saturn. So the same thing is here in our Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. is Mount Saturn. It's literally where all of your shit being run off of Mount Saturn right here in America. Excuse me. So let me give you just some before I get into the Trinity aspect of what's going on. So these are just some little symbols that have Saturn in them today. You can look up a lot more. I just want to bring you a few, like Nike, Toyota, DirecTV, Internet Explorer, Sci-Fi Channel, the New Jersey Nets, Nissan Car Company, Capital One Bank, the Saturn cars itself, the Saturn Car Company, Hyundai, Boeing, which is a aerospace company, the Fatheads logo, where LeBron used to work for. That's the Fathead dude is the guy who owns the Cavaliers, the Cleveland Cavaliers. His sign got Saturn in it. Quiznos, SanDisk, and it's like a gang of other. It's a gang more of them. But this is how deep that shit goes. And so now, one thing I skipped before we get into that, I skipped the crescent symbolism. So the symbolism of the crescent was in ancient times before when Saturn was fixed at the top, and you would have this beautiful eye in the sky. Our sun was still visible. The light of our sun, or of Ra, the current sun, was still visible at that time. It would reflect, though. It would only reflect off of Saturn, but it would only reflect off of a certain part of Saturn, side of Saturn, which would look like a crescent. And so that, it's low point, side point, high point, and then the other side. So like the 4 cardinal points. And so they named those. So at its very height, when the crescent was like this, when it was going down like that, that was the midday. When it was on its side, when it was on the left side, it was descending, but it was going into its brilliance, because you can only see at nighttime. You can only see the stars in their full glory at night, right? This is when they light up the most. So as it's going from its left side, it's going to the descent, but it's actually going into what they call its illumination. So this is why the left side actually in history was actually revered as God. It was the illuminated who was actually left-sided. This is some ill shit. So going to the left side, at the bottom was midnight. And so at midnight, this is when you can see it the brightest, at midnight. And then as it starts to ascend into the day, it would get darker. So this is where you have, anytime you see the symbolism of the crescent, it's not our moon, it's Saturn moving throughout the day. This is why it's so prevalent throughout history. That anywhere you see it, and at some point in time, this is why you have to go watch that documentary. At some point in time, when Mars descended a little bit below Venus, And so at the time when the crescent was there, and when it did that, the crescent looked like a bullhorn. And so you had Saturn, you still had Venus at the top as a circle in the middle, but you had these horns. And then when you go back and you look at all the symbolism of the calf with this circle in the middle of it, that's what that was. That was the crescent of Saturn and Venus in the middle. I'm telling y'all, this shit is the biggest shit that they have hidden throughout the world, because they use this power and energy every day against you. They could not let you find this shit out. they absolutely could not let you find this shit out, because you give your energy over to it every single goddamn day, and they need that. They need you to fucking be powering this shit up with them. And so going into Saturnalia, so going back in some more Saturn worship in Rome, they had Saturnalia. So Saturnalia is where you get Christmas from. This is when they worship Saturn. Because Saturn, this is when they would sow, they would plant all the seeds they needed for the winter. So Saturn was also the word where it gets its word is from, or it gets its name from Saturn, which means to sow, because you would plant your seeds, and then it would bring abundance when the spring came. So Saturn was the god, he would fertilize your seeds. So you would celebrate that. So this is also where the reaper comes from, because what you sow, you reap, right? So what you reap, you sow. That's where the reaper came from. That's where the whole Grim Reaper came from, because Saturn is the sower and the reaper. So because Saturn in astrology, Saturn is the planet of karma, right? And so is the number 6. So Saturn is the planet of karma. So whenever you see Saturn, if you do astrology, whenever Saturn comes around in your chart, it's basically, most people say, oh shit, Saturn's coming around. Oh shit, this some bad shit's gonna happen. That's because you haven't been paying attention to your moves every day. And you don't know if you done put some bad energy out there into the world that's gonna come back and smack you in the ass. But if you on your P's and Q's and you're putting good energy out there into the world, when Saturn shows up, that means good shit is coming back. It's only whatever you put out into the world that you will get back. So again, Saturn, reap, sow. And so in the wintertime, they would have this celebration on December 17th, and where they would give gifts and do all this stuff. And then in the festival, the slaves and the masters were able to switch place. This is where the whole energy is about. Saturnalia, the energy of Saturn is law reversal. Remember that. It's law reversal. The slaves and the masters switch place. And to show that the slaves, to show that they were free that day, they had to wear something on their hair called the Pileus cap. Right? The Pileus cap turned into the yarmulke. That's why they wear a yarmulke. It's a symbol of the Pileus cap when they flipped and they were able to take rule over the masters. And this is why they keep working this energy, because the slave has become the master. This is truly what they are. We were the slaves. Bam, bam, bam. We were the slaves. So now the slave has flipped it. Thanks to Saturn, they have flipped the energy and taken the rule over the old masters. And they have to keep working this energy because you will come back. Eventually, you will come back. They can't keep it down. They can't keep you down. They understand that shit. But eventually, you're going to come back. So they got to keep sacrificing shit to Moloch and sacrificing our good pure brothers. But they're not, they're complicit in it. They're just not killing these dudes without their compliance. These dudes are in it, and so they give their energy over to this shit freely, which is why it's called a sacrifice. They're able to do that. Otherwise, it'd just be called murder. Sacrifice is when you freely give your shit up. That's the whole point of a sacrifice. So this is the rituals they're working on, y'all. They're working on y'all. Here's some symbolism of Venus. So Venus was the mother goddess, the great mother goddess throughout history. When you hear about the mother goddess, that's Venus. Isis is the mother Venus, the great eye, which you see in the sky. Venus was called the serpent of creation because when Mars and Venus would separate and they would have these electrical discharges, these plasma discharges going on, they would look crazy in all these different crazy shapes and forms. And sometimes it would look like a spiral coming out from Venus going to Mars. And it would look like this stream spiral, and it looked like a 9, the number 9. This is where the sacred number 9 comes in. The number 9 is the number of creation. Just so y'all know, y'all better start vibrating to the number 9. It is the highest number in the universe. It is the number of creation. It is your number. It is your number. It encompasses all numbers. And so you need to start vibrating on that. But Venus was the number 9. She's called the serpent of creation. And also, some of the streams would look like, and this is where you get a lot of the pharaohs' crowns from, because some of them look like cone crowns. So if you're looking right at Mars, and you have this stream, this plasma stream going all the way back, once it got to Venus, it coned off into this, like it tapered off into this cone. So that's where the conical crowns come from in Egypt, in Kemet. Man, all of this shit was about the shit they were seeing in the sky, and it was like a movie theater. They were watching in the sky every damn night. It was so much electrical activity and electromagnetic activity and plasma shit going on in the sky. It was crazy. It was like pull up a blanket and sit down and sit back and give me some coconut juice and let's watch what's going on in the sky tonight. That's how that shit was. And so one of the things, this is where they get the Santa Claus hat. The Santa Claus hat it looks just like that. When you get the stream from Mars, the conical stream, it comes out and goes off and tapers off into this like nice ball stream. All of this shit comes from the conjunction of Mars, Venus, and Saturn. It is the hidden history, the hidden religion that runs the world, and y'all need to know so that y'all can start positioning yourself and pulling your energy back away from that and start recognizing everything you see. Uncle Sam, man. Uncle Sam in the damn army. That white bearded motherfucker. No one ever asked, who the hell is Uncle Sam? I ain't got no Uncle Sam. Why the hell they got this old white bearded dude talking about, I want you? That's Saturn. Saturn won't show ass. Absolutely. Another one was Medusa. Because some of the electrical discharges when she they would be erratic and crazy, and they looked like snakes. Because again, you had the head of Mars, or the circle of Mars, and behind it you had these crazy streams, these electrical plasma streams. It looked like snakes off the head. And that became Medusa. So every symbolism with a pointed star, that's Venus. Every symbolism with the pointed star. Unless it's the 5-pointed star turned upside down to where the 2 points are at the top, which is representing Saturn. So it's Venus. The 5-pointed star is Venus when it's turned right side up. The point is up. When it's flipped upside down, it's Saturn representing the goat. So, or Capricorn. She was known as the dragon. So just so you guys know, the dragon, this shit is real. There's a celestial dragon. And so these plasma streams, these electrical storms would look like whatever they could equate to at the time would be serpents, giant serpents fighting or moving around in the sky. And so that became the dragon. She was the mother dragon. The first dragon was Tiamat from in the ancient lore, the Sumerian lore. Tiamat was actually Earth before it got cracked in half. But so that's where the whole dragon lore came from. But when they were looking in the sky, they called Venus the great serpent, or the mother serpent, or the dragon. So this is the craziest shit. She was also Kali in the Indian culture. She was Kali the destroyer, because these electrical storms would be causing havoc on Earth. Like this shit wasn't just going on and they were just watching it and chilling, as I just kind of played. Like, these electrical discharges, they wreak havoc on the Earth's electromagnetic field, and they cause problems and storms and floods and all kind of crazy ass shit going on. So when this shit was happening, when they would see that in the sky, she became the destroyer, because she was wreaking havoc, causing all this shit go on the Earth. She was Aphrodite. They equated her with Venus. Now, Venus is also, when you look at the star, the 8-pointed star, it looks like a flower opening up. So Venus is the lotus. And in the middle of the lotus, when you see Buddha, Buddha is Mars. Buddha and the lotus is actually Mars and Venus. It's the story of Buddha, or Mars is the great warrior. He's the archetype, the warrior archetype throughout history. He's Hercules, he's Ares, he's all them cats where you see, anytime you see a sword, that represents Mars, because the electrical this is where they got the sword from. The swords were an imitation of the electrical discharges they saw in the sky. That's where the sword came from. Man. And also she was a comet. So she, she was, because of that stream, that plasma stream, what they see, it looked like a comet at times when they were dispositioned. Remember, there's an alignment and then they would be dispositioning. So they would actually go from alignment to, to disalignment to alignment, and they would be going back and forth. And when this shit was happening, you seen all this crazy celestial shit going on in the sky, and they were writing all about it all throughout history and the cultures. And so that's why I urge you guys to go see that damn documentary, Symbols of an Alien Sky, because he brings all the symbols from all these cultures around the world that couldn't possibly have any connection. And they all have the exact same drawings of the shit that was in the sky. Exact same drawings. This is where Ezekiel's vision came from. The wheel within a wheel. That's where that shit is. He was looking up in the sky, it's like this big ass fucking eye in the fucking sky. I was like, what the fuck? And think about that. If you were alive that day and you saw a big giant eye looking down at your ass, you would be tripping too. You would be, man, you'd be like, somebody is looking at me every fucking day. You'd be like, what the fuck? And you'd be tripping about that. You would call it the great God, the Lord, and all kind of other shit. So that's what was going on, man. This is the history that we haven't been told. This is the missing link to our history that we don't know. It's there and we can kind of feel it, but we don't know because they literally pulled it out and they turned it into something else. They turned Saturn into Satan, this old evil ass thing, because they worship it in its descent. That's to them. That's what it is to them. Saturn at its height was bomb. He gave us all kind of shit. We were living nice on Saturn. So not that you need to worship any of these things. You are your God. You don't worship any of these planets, anything like that. You understand today that you are God. These planets are literally you. You are these planets. As above, so below. But back in the day when we didn't understand that, we were, and the planets are alive. They are big, giant, great entities that we don't understand. Consciousness that we could never understand. We're not of that level. Like, these are giant, the consciousness that take care that embody and that embody life on a level that we couldn't possibly understand. So, but there's no reason for you to worship them. You don't be worshiping those planets. And all I'm saying is the reason their worship is it could be anything that they're worshiping. It's just a focal point for them to put their energy. It's a beacon. Saturn is just a beacon for them to put their energy. You can do it with anything that you attribute to, wealth and, and prosperity and, and whatever the hell they equate to Saturn. You could do that with anything. It's wherever you focus your energy, that's where it will go. But since Saturn had already been there and, it was already the great God, it was like, shit, we'll just roll with Saturn since he already been there and got everybody in on it. All of y'all are in on it. I was in on it when I was doing the GOAT conversations and all the rest of that, and so much more. I mean, again, going back to the MLK moniker, that means Moloch, or Malcolm, that means Moloch. Although both of those names come from Moloch, but again, the MLK moniker means Moloch. So what did they get? What is the commercial that's been playing for the last 25 years? Got milk? See, you don't know in history, the vowel doesn't mean anything. It's the consonants. So milk is actually MLK. It's Moloch. And milk will kill you. It's bad for you. It's 70%, 75% of the planet are not supposed to drink milk. You're not supposed to drink another mammal's milk. The only milk you're supposed to drink is your mother's, and that's why you lose lactase in your stomach, because you're only supposed to drink it for a certain time. When you get a certain age, you ain't supposed to drink milk no more. But you drinking milk every goddamn day, and they know that destroys your body. Milk, it creates mucus in your body and your cells and breaks you down and kill you. They know that. But they got you worshiping that shit. Thinking you got to put it in your cereal every damn day. This shit is man, it is crazy. So let me just give you some Mars symbolism real quick. So Mars, I told you, is Horus, Ra, Aries, Hercules, the hero warrior throughout history, Buddha, Krishna, the pupil of the eye, and the sword. But also the sword is Saturn, because sword is S word. S is for Saturn. Word, the word, which you guys don't know, word means verb. The word, the definition of word is verb. It's an action. It's not a, so it's Saturn, it's the movement of Saturn or action of Saturn. That's what a sword is. And let me see, throughout history. So throughout history, this is where you get the dark and the light, the whole concept of which is why they try to push this with Star Wars. And remember, and this is no, and I'm not, and when I talk about Jewish people, I'm not talking about Jewish people as a whole. I'm talking about the elite Jewish people who are in these societies who run shit. And George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Bob Zemeckis, those are probably 3 top cats, Jewish cats in Hollywood who are in these things and put in these different societies, and they put that stuff in their movies for you to, for you to see but not see. And George Lucas, it's all throughout throughout Star Wars. It's all throughout there. Yoda is Yahweh, which is Saturn. Y'all don't. It's Yahuda. It's Yoda is Yehuda, which is Yahweh, which is Saturn. So it's everywhere. Please learn it. It's the energy that's taken over, and the universe sent me this real. I mean, it was just flooding me with this because I knew this early on. Like, so my information career started, now I don't like to call it career, but my information life, or my alternate information life, started back in the day. A friend of mine, I got one of the first videos I watched was Jordan Maxwell, I think, and it was and you guys should watch this too. It's called The Naked Truth. And then there was another one about occultism, something about the secrets of occultism or something like that, and he was breaking down the whole symbolism thing. So this is how I first started to get into symbolism. Was I watched his movie, and he was showing how Exxon and Shell and the Shell oil company. That's the other thing. The different shapes that Venus would take on when she would go at different aspects and different positions. One of them was a shell in the sky. And so you, throughout history and throughout these cultures, you see them pay homage or worship to a shell. That was because that was Venus and Mars at the front and this shell around it. But that's also where you get the Egyptian Namuz, and they call it it's the feminine part. It's the feminine part, the cloak. When you look at it in the back, it's a shell. It's a seashell, and that represented Venus up in the sky. So the Kemetans and the Sumerians knew what was going on. They were given the right energy. They understood about the harmony, and look at how they lived. Now they got us disharmonies, and worshiping some bullshit, instead of ourselves. Really, what we should be on. We should be, you're God. You should be on you worship. You know what I'm saying? But that. So one last thing. So the pyramid, the ancient pyramid in the eye, or the all-seeing eye, which most people will equate to, it means it's the third eye in the, or your pineal gland. Whenever you're watching these Caucasians, and they're breaking down the ancient history, they don't put the melanated history, the Moorish history in it. So you're gonna get half of it. This is a part where if you don't add us in the history, it doesn't work, because we were there first. We were the ones doing it. So if you exclude us from your explanations, and you exclude the philosophy and science that we were on, none of it works. As well, a lot of this shit worked because we had melanin. This is the one big thing that they don't want to say. This is the big giant elephant in the room, that you had to have melanin to work a lot of this stuff, which is why they have to do so many rituals for you. They don't have the melanin they don't have the superconductivity that you do. So they got to get together in groups and work these rituals constantly every year. You have vibranium. You are connected. You can just boop. You sit down and you vibrate and you meditate and put it out to the universe. That shit will happen way faster than anybody else who doesn't have that melanin. So they know that, which is why they have to get us in and use our melanin as the power conductor for it, or the superconductor for their rituals. So pull yourself back. Now that you know what's going on, start to look at the symbolism, start to look up everything. Don't, you know what I'm saying, don't take anything for granted. If you don't know what it is, make sure you look that shit up. It's probably Saturn. It's probably some combination of the, you know, of the ancient Trinity. And remember, Trinity and going back to the Matrix. Going back to the Matrix is real ill. The Matrix or Neo represented the new sun. That's what Neo was. Neo was the new. That's why Neo means new. Right? So Neo was the new sun that came and took over. So again, this is I can't tell you how much is in there. 8 symbols of an alien sky. His follow-up was Discourses on an Alien Sky. And their whole group is called the Thunderbolt Project, because they do these experiments with plasma discharges, because that's what explains all of the different things that our ancients were seeing in the sky, is with electrical plasma discharges between the planets when they would interact. So you got to go look that stuff up and see that science and the history of it. But that's what I got now. I'm gonna make the 3rd video. That's when I'm gonna make the video to show you the symbolism and take you through the computer to show you this. But I had to get all of this, I had to get the story of it out, because most people don't understand why they're doing it. They think they're just worshiping some demon, some evil devil shit. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because they understand that at one point in time, they were the slaves, we were the masters, and they had to work that energy to flip it. And to keep it like that, they have to constantly keep doing that energy. They constantly got to keep serving or you know, feeding the demon or the Moloch, as it were, and sacrificing the child or the baby. Another thing that they got from this whole shit, the Saturnalia thing, in Saturnalia, they would let you run to people's houses. And, you know, the slave or the person who was the master now for the night, or however long Saturnalia lasted, they were able to run up in the nobles' houses, and they were able to take shit and do whatever they want and wreak havoc in the house and fuck and fuck whoever they wanted. They did a lot of this shit. That's where the Purge comes from. That movie, The Purge, that's all about Saturnalia. Saturnalia it was Saturnalia from December 17th to the 25th, which is where December 25th is where you got your Christmas. So from that time, they would purge. They would do a certain purging. And that's why at some point in time, that shit got so out of hand that when the colonists, the plantation colonists, when they got over here, they outlawed Christmas because they didn't want all that fuckery in it. But then when all the new immigrants started to come over, more and more immigrants started to come over, and they were bringing this culture. They were bringing Saturnalia with them from the old world. It got implanted back into America. So that's all I got to say for today. You know, I'm gonna make the video that's showing y'all the rest of that stuff, but there was so much stuff I had to get out and tell you the history and tell you the philosophy of it that I just had to do the live video. So that's it. Go and get right over to the Reelnagas.com, Naga Knowledge Shop. Get the whole package. It's the whole package and the card, or I don't know where my card is, but get the whole package at this and the card. And if you get the Melanin book, the Great Book of Melanin Research, I will give you the package for free, and that's till Monday, because the website was off for a few days and you were trying to get it. So it's back on. People who wanted the deal, go and get it. And I'm gonna holler at y'all in the next video. Peace.